a prejudiced and discriminatory educator in a room filled with conflict. Yet there's a surprise that nobody anticipated, and it is set to reveal years of concealed bias. Are you ready to uncover the truth hidden within classroom walls? What would you do if you realized bias has been at play all along? Comment below your thoughts before we dive in. Prepare yourself for a tale that will cause you to reconsider what truly happens behind the doors of a classroom. The bell chimed, indicating the beginning of a new day at Westfield High. Miss Roberts positioned herself at the front of her English class, her sharp eyes scanning the students as they got comfortable in their seats. The atmosphere was heavy with discomfort, a recurring strain that consistently accompanied her classes. The magic word of today is resilience. Write it in the comments to participate in our contest and win exclusive prizes. Moreover, for every comment received, we will contribute to providing educational resources to underprivileged communities. Just as the final few laggards rushed in, a fresh face emerged in the doorway. Jasmine King entered the room, her backpack draped over one shoulder. The gazes of the other students tracked her, some intrigued, others cautious. Miss Roberts's lips pressed into a narrow line as she observed Jasmine approach an empty desk. "Oh, how lovely," Miss Roberts remarked, her voice laced with insincere sweetness. "Looks like we have a new member in our class. I truly hope you can manage our demanding curriculum." Her emphasis on demanding clearly indicated her skepticism. Jasmine held her gaze firmly but remained silent. As Miss Roberts faced the board again, the mood in the room changed, a tempest forming just below the surface. The atmosphere in the classroom was intense. What occurs when a teacher's bias meets a student's subtle resilience? But what would you do in her situation? Would you challenge authority, or would you stay quiet to avoid conflict? Share your stance in the comments. Jasmine's upcoming decision might alter everything. Miss Roberts cleared her throat, narrowing her eyes as they focused on Jasmine. Today we will examine the themes of power and oppression in To Kill a Mockingbird. Who wants to begin? She scanned the room, intentionally overlooking Jasmine's hand in the air. After speaking with a few more students, Miss Roberts ultimately recognized Jasmine with a brief, close-mouthed grin. "Yes, Miss King. If you're captivated by stories that shed light on overlooked truths, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Join our community where voices matter and never miss out on our transformative stories." "Do you have anything to add?" Jasmine sat up straight, speaking confidently. "I think the novel illustrates the impact of systemic racism." "Systemic racism?" Miss Roberts cut in, her tone laced with sarcasm. "Sweetheart, you seem to be mixing this classic American work with current political issues." An air of tension spread across the classroom. A few students fidgeted in their chairs, while others grinned, looking forward to the conflict developing in front of them. Jasmine inhaled deeply, her fingers gripping the edge of her desk. "With all respect, Miss Roberts, the racial injustice depicted in the book illustrates—" "That's enough," Miss Roberts interrupted her again, gesturing dismissively. "Maybe you should concentrate on grasping the text as it's presented, instead of imposing your own views." The atmosphere in the room became heavy with tension. Jasmine's jaw tightened, her gaze fixed on Miss Roberts's face. She stayed quiet, yet her body language conveyed a lot, an unspoken rebellion that appeared to disturb the teacher even further. Miss Roberts faced the whiteboard again, her marker making a squeaking sound as she wrote. "Now let's talk about the real themes the author aimed to convey." This unwavering resolve leads us to question, when is compliance more harmful than resistance? Let's debate it. Should authority always be followed? Or is there a right to dissent? Could someone explain the meaning behind the mockingbird? Throughout the lesson, Miss Roberts deliberately overlooked Jasmine's efforts to join in. Whenever Jasmine raised her hand, the teacher's eyes would move beyond her as if she were unseen. The implication was unmistakable. Jasmine's voice was not desired in this classroom. Other students started to pay attention. Some shared anxious looks, their unease escalating with every minute that went by. Others, on the other hand, appeared to thrive on the teacher's actions, casting sideways grins toward Jasmine. Jasmine's irritation was clear in her tense shoulders and the constriction around her eyes, but she stayed calm, her pen gliding consistently over her notebook as she made careful notes. It was a minor act of defiance, a declaration to not be muted or excluded from her education. As the lesson approached its conclusion, Miss Roberts revealed a group assignment. "I'll be determining the groups. We wouldn't want anyone feeling uncomfortable." The significance of her statement lingered in the atmosphere. Jasmine's eyes narrowed just a bit, acknowledging the challenge for what it truly was. She straightened her shoulders, facing Miss Roberts's gaze with calm resolve. As the bell sounded, marking the end of class, students started to exit. Jasmine spent time collecting her belongings, her actions intentional and relaxed. As Jasmine approached the door, Miss Roberts shouted, "Miss King, can we talk?" Jasmine pivoted, her face remaining carefully impassive. "Certainly, Miss Roberts." The teacher's grin was narrow and pointed. "I trust you recognize that our class emphasizes facts and analysis over personal beliefs or motives. I would feel terrible watching you have a hard time due to the inability to detach your emotions from the coursework." For a brief moment, Jasmine was silent. Then, with a composure that concealed the turmoil within her, she responded, "I completely understand, Miss Roberts. I am eager to showcase my analytical abilities in our upcoming conversation." With that, she pivoted and exited, leaving Miss Roberts gazing after her, a brief moment of doubt crossing the teacher's expression. As time went on, Miss Roberts's initial doubt transformed into a firm determination. She would demonstrate to that girl precisely who held the power, regardless of the expense. The upcoming class would expose the extent of her bias and challenge Jasmine's resilience as never before. The next week, Jasmine walked into the classroom confidently, ready to confront any obstacles that awaited her. Miss Roberts positioned herself at the front, her gaze tightening as Jasmine sat down. The atmosphere buzzed with tension, a tempest forming just below the surface. As the lesson started, Miss Roberts's attention on Jasmine grew stronger. Every action, every word faced examination. "Miss King, is that chewing gum I see in your mouth?" she snapped, her tone biting enough to shatter glass. Jasmine halted, her hand positioned mid-air near her mouth. She wasn't chewing gum whatsoever. "No, Miss Roberts," Jasmine started, but the teacher interrupted her. "Don't lie to me, young lady. Say it right now." Miss Roberts's tone oozed with contempt. Jasmine's peers shifted awkwardly, some turning away their gaze, while others observed with unsettling intrigue. Jasmine rose gradually, her actions purposeful. She strolled over to the trash can, pretended to spit out imaginary gum, and went back to her seat. The quiet in the room was overwhelming. As the class went on, Miss Roberts's conduct became more and more audacious. She scrutinized every detail of Jasmine's involvement, from her handwriting to her posture. "Sit up straight, Miss King. This isn't merely a casual hangout," she exclaimed, disregarding that Jasmine's stance was similar to those of her classmates. Jasmine's irritation was clear in the tension of her jaw and how her fingers gripped her pen. She inhaled deeply, fighting to keep her poise as the barrage persisted. The classroom atmosphere started to change. A few students, such as Sarah in the front row, cast empathetic looks at Jasmine when Miss Roberts glanced away. Others, encouraged by the teacher's actions, chimed in with chuckles and hushed remarks. In a group discussion, Jasmine lifted her hand to add her thoughts. Miss Roberts's lips formed a frosty smile. Indeed, Miss King. Please share your distinct viewpoint. Jasmine's voice was calm as she started to talk, but Miss Roberts cut in right away. I apologize, but could you articulate more distinctly? We want to know your thoughts. Has there ever been a time you felt silenced or overlooked? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here. Not everyone can comprehend certain dialects. A shared gasp echoed around the classroom. Jasmine's eyes grew large, her hands balling into fists under her desk. The racism, previously hidden, now appeared bare and repulsive to everyone. When the bell rang, indicating class is over, Miss Roberts announced, "Miss King, I need you to see me after class. We must talk about your performance." Jasmine walked up to the teacher's desk, her heart racing while she maintained a calm expression. Miss Roberts raised her gaze, her eyes icy. "I trust you realize, Miss King, that your demeanor is turning into an issue. If you're unable to meet the expectations of this class, you might want to think about seeking a more appropriate setting." The suggestion lingered uncomfortably in the atmosphere. Jasmine inhaled deeply, her tone soft, yet resolute. "I completely understand, Miss Roberts. I'll keep giving my best effort, just like I always do." As Jasmine was about to leave, Miss Roberts shouted, "Oh, and Miss King, remember your group project presentation is due next week. I truly hope you're ready." Jasmine nodded, her thoughts already in motion. She realized the presentation would mark a pivotal moment. Miss Roberts would see it as a chance to embarrass her before the whole class, but Jasmine was resolute in refusing to provide her that pleasure. The atmosphere buzzed with expectation as Jasmine approached to give her presentation. She had no idea that Miss Roberts was anticipating this moment to deliver her most vicious strike thus far. What would occur when bias and authority clashed before the whole class? Jasmine inhaled deeply, steadying herself as she confronted her classmates. She devoted endless hours getting ready for this moment, resolute in her aim to demonstrate her worth, despite Miss Roberts's continual demeaning comments. The project board she presented showcased a carefully researched examination of To Kill a Mockingbird, emphasizing the issues of racial inequality and ethical bravery. When Jasmine started her presentation, Miss Roberts's gaze tightened, her mouth twisting into a smirk. She observed like a predator poised to strike, her pen tapping restlessly on her grading sheet. The other students fidgeted nervously in their seats, feeling the unease in the atmosphere. Midway through her presentation, Jasmine stopped to respond to questions. Miss Roberts's hand shot up right away. "Miss King," she said slowly, her tone laced with insincerity, "I'm intrigued by your selection of focus. Don't you believe you're placing too much importance on some elements of the novel?" Jasmine's forehead creased a bit, yet her tone was calm. "I think the racial themes are key to grasping the book's message." "I know what the author stated," Miss Roberts interjected, her voice cutting, "but I'm more curious about why you appear incapable of valuing the wider literary qualities beyond your individual prejudices." A shared gasp swept through the class. Jasmine's fists tightened at her sides, her meticulously held poise starting to falter. "I don't think my assessment is prejudiced, Miss Roberts. I have backed every argument with textual proof and academic references." Miss Roberts got up, her chair making a loud noise as it moved on the floor. She walked confidently to the front of the room, placing herself between Jasmine and her classmates. "I want to clarify something, Miss King. This ongoing emphasis on race is not only erroneous, but also detrimental to the educational atmosphere. Maybe at your last school, such limited viewpoints were tolerated, but here we demand a greater standard of academic excellence." The quiet in the room was overwhelming. Several students gazed at their desks, unable to look Jasmine in the eye. Others observed with a blend of dread and grim curiosity as their instructor maintained her outburst. Moreover, Miss Roberts continued, her tone elevating, "Your persistence in infusing contemporary political themes into classic literature is both unsuitable and reveals a basic misunderstanding. I'm starting to question whether you can genuinely manage the curriculum at this level." Jasmine's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, yet she stood her ground. "Miss Roberts, I must respectfully disagree. The themes of racial inequality in To Kill a Mockingbird are just as pertinent now as they were at the time of the book's publication. Disregarding them undermines the author's purpose." "That's enough," Miss Roberts retorted. "Your demeanor is nearing insubordination. I recommend you sit down and consider if you're genuinely ready for the academic expectations of this course." As Jasmine carefully collected her belongings, the burden of embarrassment weighed heavily on her. A soft voice emerged from the rear of the room, but I believed Jasmine's presentation was quite impressive. Every comment adds a voice to this crucial conversation. Engage now and help amplify the discussion about the importance of diversity and inclusion in education. Miss Roberts spun around, her eyes blazing. "And what do you understand about literary analysis, Mr. Peterson? Maybe you want to accompany Miss King in detention to talk about your academic deficiencies." The student recoiled in his chair, rendered mute. Miss Roberts glanced back at Jasmine, who was standing still by her desk. "So, what are you waiting for? Take a seat so we can proceed to presentations that are truly valuable." Jasmine settled into her chair, her cheeks flushed with a blend of fury and embarrassment. She sensed her classmates' gazes on her, some showing sympathy, while others were mockingly entertained. The unfairness of the situation nearly consumed her, yet she urged herself to breathe slowly and evenly as Miss Roberts announced the next student to showcase. Jasmine's thoughts raced. She realized she couldn't allow this to go on, but what options did she have? The teacher possessed all the authority, and voicing opinions would just result in further embarrassment. For the time being, she would need to persevere, but a calm resolve started to grow inside her. This was not finished. While Jasmine sat in her place, her thoughts swirling with ideas of fairness and vengeance, destiny was on the verge of presenting an unforeseen twist. The classroom door swung open, and Miss Roberts glanced up, a self-satisfied grin tugging at her mouth. "Class, I have a significant announcement," Miss Roberts proclaimed, her tone laced with insincere sweetness. "I've resolved that it's time for a parent-teacher meeting about Miss King's performance." Jasmine's heart pounded, a blend of fear and resistance rushing through her bloodstream. She was aware that her father would defend her, yet the idea of him facing Miss Roberts made her feel anxious. The other students looked at each other, some anxious, others intrigued about what was to come. Miss Roberts went on, unaware of the tempest forming just outside her classroom. "I've arranged a meeting with Miss King's parents after school today. I'm certain they will be quite eager to learn about her troubling actions and inadequate school results." Just as Miss Roberts finished speaking, footsteps resonated in the corridor. They were consistent and deliberate, increasing in volume with every ticking second. The whole class appeared to pause, feeling that something significant was on the verge of happening. The sounds of footsteps ceased right outside the door. A short moment of anticipation lingered in the air before a decisive knock shattered the stillness. Miss Roberts's brows knitted together, evidently upset by the interruption. "Enter," she shouted, her tone laced with annoyance. The door opened, disclosing a tall, elegant man in a neat suit. His presence instantly captured attention, and a wave of recognition swept over the students. It was the principal of the school, Mr. King. Jasmine's eyes grew large, a combination of astonishment and relief spreading across her face. She looked at Miss Roberts, who remained completely oblivious to the link between the newcomer and her intended student. Mr. King entered the room, his gaze swiftly assessing the expressions in front of him. They hesitated. For a brief moment, worry passed between Jasmine and Mr. King. Then he faced Miss Roberts, his face expressionless, yet his stance exuded command. Miss Roberts, he spoke, his voice measured, but with a hint of firmness. I trust I'm not disrupting anything significant. Miss Roberts straightened, forcing her most businesslike smile. Not at all, Mr. King. We were just concluding a lesson on To Kill a Mockingbird. Is there anything I can assist you with? Mr. King nodded, focusing his gaze on the teacher. Indeed, there is. I see that you've asked for a parent-teacher meeting concerning one of your students. Miss Roberts's grin grew larger, evidently happy that her authority was acknowledged. Yes, that is right. I think it's important to tackle specific problems before they escalate further. I understand. And which student could this be? Mr. King responded, his tone unchanging. Miss Roberts turned, waving dismissively at Jasmine. Miss King, actually, no connection to you, of course. We want to know your thoughts. Has there ever been a time you felt silenced or overlooked? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here. You see, Mr. King was Chinese American, leading Miss Roberts to believe he couldn't possibly be related to her student. She laughed at her own joke, unaware of the increasing tension in the room. Mr. King's eyebrow lifted a bit, the sole external indication of his response. Is that so? Indeed, Miss Roberts, I think we ought to explore this issue in more detail, possibly in a private setting. Miss Roberts nodded enthusiastically, envisioning the backing she would gain from the principal. Certainly, Mr. King. I'm willing to express my worries regarding Ms. King's performance and demeanor. While Miss Roberts collected her belongings, Mr. King shifted his focus to the class. Students, feel free to proceed with your designated reading. We'll just take a moment. He then fixed his gaze on Jasmine, a slight comforting smile emerging at the edges of his lips. It was a delicate action, yet it conveyed a great deal. Jasmine straightened up, experiencing a wave of confidence that she hadn't felt in weeks. Miss Roberts, remaining unaware of the real nature of the circumstances, guided everyone out of the classroom. Mr. King continued on, stopping for a moment at the door to take one final look at his daughter. The glance they exchanged conveyed a sense of mutual understanding and collective strength. When the door shut behind them, a hum of eager whispers resonated throughout the room. Students leaned over their desks, wondering what was going to happen next. Jasmine stayed quiet, her gaze locked on the door, aware that beyond it, justice was close to being delivered. The shut door failed to dampen the increasing voices beyond. Miss Roberts's assured voice turned into hesitant bewilderment as Mr. King's composure enveloped the atmosphere. How would the teacher's perspective change upon learning Jasmine's real identity? Miss Roberts guided everyone to an unoccupied conference room, her heels tapping on the tiled floor. She faced Mr. King, a self-satisfied smile on her lips. Thank you for making the time to go over this issue, Mr. King. I have been rather worried about Jasmine's conduct and performance in my class, Mr. King replied, maintaining a neutral expression. I understand. Kindly share additional details about your worries. Miss Roberts began expressing her grievances, her tone becoming increasingly lively as time went on. To begin with, she regularly questions the curriculum. She persists in inserting her opinions into each conversation, disrupting the lessons I've meticulously planned. As she spoke, Mr. King's eyes subtly narrowed. He stayed quiet, letting Miss Roberts carry on with her outburst. And her demeanor, Miss Roberts shouted, raising her arms in frustration. She perpetually interrupts the class with her unusual viewpoints. Today, she delivered a presentation that entirely overlooked the essence of To Kill a Mockingbird, concentrating only on racial issues and neglecting its wider literary value. Mr. King raised an eyebrow. And you think this emphasis on racial issues is unsuitable for a discussion of a novel centered on a controversial trial? Isn't it time to reflect on whether we've been taught literature in a way that truly reflects its intent? Should we continue to shield certain discussions from academic exploration or face them head-on? Miss Roberts hesitated for a brief moment, unexpectedly taken aback by the question. Well, I think we should concentrate on the universal themes instead of getting mired in specific problems. I understand, Mr. King replied, his tone steady. And in what way has Jasmine been disruptive? Could you provide me with particular instances? Certainly. She frequently raises her hand to contest the points I make during class. She disputes with fellow students in discussions, and her body language, the way she sits there so defiantly, shows she lacks respect for authority. As Miss Roberts spoke, Mr. King's expression changed slightly. A glint of determination appeared in his eyes, yet his tone stayed composed. Miss Roberts, may I pose a question? Have you thought that what you see as defiance could be a student participating in critical thinking? Miss Roberts blinked, surprised by the inquiry. I guess I hadn't viewed it like that. However, Mr. King, you must realize that this girl just isn't suitable for our school. Her earlier education may have been insufficient. Maybe another setting would be better for her. Mr. King's jaw clenched, almost unnoticed. I understand. And what leads you to believe that Jasmine's prior education was insufficient? Miss Roberts's departure marks a pivotal turn. What do you think should be the next step for Westfield High to foster inclusivity and equality? Let your suggestions be part of the change. Isn't it clear? Miss Roberts replied, her tone laden with disdain. Her manner of speaking, her emphasis on specific topics, it's evident she hasn't encountered the level of challenge we require here. Mr. King inhaled deeply, his composed exterior concealing the turmoil simmering within. Miss Roberts, I believe it's important I clarify for you. Jasmine's prior education was outstanding. Indeed, I can attest to that myself. Miss Roberts furrowed her brow, clarity missing from her expression. I'm not sure I follow. How can you possibly be aware of that? Mr. King's eyes focused intently on Miss Roberts, his stare unyielding. I'm aware because I am Jasmine's father. The color faded from Miss Roberts's complexion as she absorbed the meaning of Mr. King's statement. Her lips parted and shut multiple times, yet no noise emerged. The self-assuredness that had seen her through the discussion vanished instantly. You're... Miss Roberts faltered, her eyes large with disbelief and mounting terror. Mr. King agreed, his demeanor serious. Indeed, Miss Roberts, Jasmine King is my daughter, and I've attentively absorbed all your comments regarding her. Miss Roberts recoiled, her hand grasping the corner of a nearby desk for balance. The understanding of her actions, the biases she had disclosed to the school's principal, and even more critically to a father, hit her like a tidal wave. Mr. King, I wasn't aware. She was able to stammer, her voice just above a whisper. Obviously, Mr. King responded, his tone heavy enough to make Miss Roberts recoil. However, ignorance is not a justification for the conduct you've shown. You have shown a distinct prejudice towards my daughter, and your remarks imply a recurring issue of discrimination that extends beyond just one student. Miss Roberts's thoughts raced, urgently looking for a solution to remedy the situation. Mr. King, please, I can clarify. I never intended to... Mr. King raised a hand, quieting her. I believe you've clarified quite enough, Miss Roberts. We'll engage in a more extended discussion on this topic later. But for the moment, I recommend you head back to your classroom. We certainly don't want to make the students wait, right? As Miss Roberts silently acknowledged and began to exit, Mr. King remarked, Additionally, Miss Roberts, I'll be observing your class for the rest of the day. I am quite eager to witness your teaching techniques in person." Mr. King's calm tone concealed the turmoil beneath as he re-entered the classroom, trailed by a visibly unsettled Miss Roberts. The atmosphere changed noticeably. Students sat up in their seats, feeling the tension buzzing between the two adults. "Class," Mr. King spoke to the room, his tone steady yet imbued with firmness. "I think it's time for us to engage in a crucial conversation about respect, diversity, and the genuine aim of education." Miss Roberts remained stiffly by her desk, her prior confidence dissolved. She looked nervously at Mr. King, then at Jasmine, her thoughts racing to comprehend the revelation she had just encountered. Mr. King proceeded, his eyes scanning the room. "I have been made aware of some troubling occurrences in this class, occurrences that contradict everything our school represents." A shared gasp echoed among the students. Some shot covert looks at Jasmine, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "Miss Roberts, could you please clarify to the class why you deemed it necessary to consistently undermine and belittle one of your students?" The teacher's lips opened and shut, her words escaping her. "Mr. King, I never intended to..." "Never intended to do what, Miss Roberts?" Mr. King's voice heightened a bit, his carefully controlled demeanor starting to crumble. "Never intended to make racist judgments about a student's background. Never intended to disregard legitimate interpretations of literature simply because they clashed with your limited perspective." The students remained in shocked silence as their typically calm principal underwent a striking change. His articulate and piercing words unveiled the inequities that had been festering beneath the surface of their classroom for several weeks. "Let me clarify," Mr. King proceeded, fixing his gaze on Miss Roberts. "Your treatment of Jasmine, and likely other students of color, is not just unprofessional, but profoundly damaging. You have established a space where students are uncomfortable sharing their feelings and experiences." Miss Roberts tried to speak up, her voice quaking. "Mr. King, may I just clarify?" "Clarify what exactly?" Mr. King interrupted, his temper fraying. "Clarify how you ridicule Jasmine's interpretation of To Kill a Mockingbird for emphasizing racial issues. Describe how you have repeatedly overlooked her raised hand during class discussions. Or maybe you'd like to clarify your remark about her prior education being insufficient just because she doesn't fit your preconceived ideas." The color faded from Miss Roberts's face as Mr. King described her behavior. She looked around the room for a sign of encouragement, but all she saw were faces filled with shock and disappointment. Mr. King faced the class again. "Students, I need you to grasp this. Education is not about muting voices or rejecting viewpoints that oppose our own. It's about broadening our comprehension, participating in respectful conversations, and gaining insights from varied experiences." Miss Roberts's departure marks a pivotal turn. What do you think should be the next step for Westfield High to foster inclusivity and equality? Let your suggestions be part of the change. He took a moment, allowing his words to resonate. What you've observed in this classroom isn't education. It's clear discrimination. And it ends today. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. A few students squirmed restlessly in their chairs, while others signaled their agreement with Mr. King's statements. Jasmine remained still, her eyes shimmering with tears of relief and justification that she held back. Mr. King's eyes shifted back to Miss Roberts, who appeared to shrink beneath his examination. "Miss Roberts, your behavior has shown a distinct trend of discrimination that extends beyond just one student. This conduct is intolerable and will be handled via the appropriate channels. For the time being, I will handle your class for the rest of the day." As Miss Roberts packed her belongings, her motions stiff and disjointed, the truth of the situation appeared to dawn on her. She gave one final frantic glance around the classroom before rushing out the door. The quiet that came after she left was overwhelming. Mr. King inhaled deeply, clearly steadying himself before he spoke to the class again. "I'm sorry you had to see this, but it's crucial for you to recognize that prejudice and discrimination are unacceptable in our school and society." He stepped to the front of the room, his stance easing a bit. A few students appeared stunned. Others showed signs of relief, while some offered guilty looks to Jasmine, the burden of their unspoken complicity palpable in the atmosphere. Mr. King cleared his throat to recapture the class's focus. "I understand that this has been a challenging and emotional experience for everyone. We'll have a counselor come in to assist with processing the events that have occurred here. For the time being, class is let out early. Take this moment to think about what you have seen and how we can collaborate to foster a more inclusive atmosphere." As the students exited, several stopped to share encouraging words with Jasmine. Sarah, who consistently sat quietly in the front row, moved forward with hesitation. "I apologize for never speaking out," she said, her voice soft and low. "I understood that what was occurring wasn't right, but I felt frightened." "It won't occur again," Jasmine replied, a slight smile of comprehension on her face. "I appreciate it, Sarah." Expressing oneself is challenging, yet it's the way we improve situations. Beyond the classroom, news circulated rapidly. Students formed small clusters, quietly conversing about what they had heard as Jasmine appeared, accompanied by her father. Silence descended on the corridor, and then gradually, a wave of clapping started. It began with only a handful of students, then expanded until it resonated along the hallway. Jasmine strode confidently, her chin up. The anxiety and loneliness she'd experienced for weeks faded, giving way to a feeling of strength. Her classmates weren't merely noticing her now. They were genuinely acknowledging her strength and resilience. In the administrative office, Miss Roberts dealt with the repercussions of her behavior. The school board gathered for an urgent meeting, and within a few hours, a resolution was made. When the last bell rang, marking the conclusion of the school day, security escorted Miss Roberts out of the building, holding a cardboard box of her belongings tightly against her chest. Students observed from windows and doorways as their past teacher made her way to her car. Her time in education essentially finished. The scene offered no satisfaction, just a grave acknowledgement that actions lead to repercussions. The following morning, as Jasmine neared the school, she sensed a shift in the environment. Students who had once shunned her now greeted her with friendly smiles and waves in the corridors. She caught fragments of discussions regarding diversity workshops and initiatives for a cultural awareness club. Upon entering her English classroom, currently under the guidance of a substitute teacher, Jasmine was welcomed by a wave of encouraging faces. The strain that had filled the room for weeks disappeared, giving way to a sense of openness and shared respect. At lunch, Jasmine was surrounded by peers, eager to hear her opinions on ways to enhance school inclusivity. Thoughts circulated abundantly, ranging from expanding the curriculum to creating mentorship initiatives for underrepresented students. For the first time, Jasmine sensed she was genuinely acknowledged and appreciated. After school, while Jasmine exited with her father, they walked by Miss Roberts's vacant parking space. Mr. King gently pressed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You realize?" And so ends one chapter of this story. What does the future hold for Jasmine and Westfield High? In our next video, we'll dive into more untold narratives that push boundaries and redefine norms. Stay tuned and don't miss out. Subscribe to the channel, comment, and share this video with at least 3 people for whom the story could have a significant emotional impact. Together, we can transform narratives and give voice to those who have not had one.